Today I'm speaking with Cheryl Marella. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
And Cheryl is all the way on the other side of the planet. It is 9 o'clock at night here where I'm recording, Eastern Time, USA, Atlanta. And you are in Bali, Indonesia. So it is exactly 12 hours different, 9 a.m. So we had to do a little bit of work to get our schedules together on this one, but I appreciate you doing this.
Yes, thank you so much again. Sorry.
You're kind of from the future in a sense, so it's my Friday night, it's your Saturday morning.
That's so true. Yes.
Yeah, you got in your DeLorean. Well, I just want to give everyone a brief bio for Cheryl in case you don't know her already. Cheryl Marella is a TV and radio personality in Indonesia. She has also worked in the United States, but she is currently still in Indonesia. And she started her media and journalism career as a radio DJ at MTV on Sky Radio in 2003. And feel free to correct me if I get anything wrong here. And she went on to host shows in media companies such as 101 Jack FM, Discovery Turbo, MTV Indonesia, CNN Indonesia, Channel News Asia, and other companies. And she's also, on top of all that, she's a writer, an MC, a moderator, a public speaking coach, and a digital marketer. So it sounds like you must have plenty of free time on your hands. That's a lot of stuff. And just to finish up the bio here, and I'll have you add some more the other sides to it that I didn't know about perhaps. Her passion is to empower, educate, and inspire women around the world to love themselves and to awaken as many people as possible to the importance of their self-improvement. At one point, you were working toward a dream of having a company, including an animal ranch. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would love to. That's the end game, I think. I would love to have an animal ranch and just rescue as many animals as possible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And is that, would you be like an animal doctor? Or more just like taking animals and just giving them a really nice place to live, like a kind of a home zoo?
Yes, the home zoo. Yes, that's heaven for me.
That's awesome. And I'll give one more thing in a second, but since we're talking about that, what would be your favorite animal if you had to narrow it down to just one? What's your favorite animal that you'd love to have in that zoo?
Oh, it's dogs, cats. Dogs, cats.
How about any exotic animals?
Well, I don't know how to handle them. Although I love lions, I think they're really majestic, but I don't think I would have them.
Yeah, that's cool. And last thing here, you studied at Universitas Pelita Harapan, which is a private Christian university. Is that in Indonesia?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So that's the bio, and I saw as well that there was a video where you were hosting a sports section. Was that for CNN or for a different?
Yeah, it was for CNN, yes.
Gotcha. And how long were you at CNN?
I was working for CNN 1.5 years before I moved to Bali, yes.
And how long were you with MTV?
I was with MTV in 2007, so I think about a year.
Gotcha. So you've really seen a bunch of different venues, and I'm sure you've got a lot of cool contacts through that. What was your favorite memory from being a newscaster?
Oh, there are plenty, but I think the best ones are actually having to interview international VIP people, which I never thought I would have, even met them at the first place, but because of the perks of working in media industry, it was all possible. And from Justin Bieber to Kool and the Gang, which is way older generation, but you've met them all. And I think that was the best part of the job.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's a nice perk. And in terms of that bio wrapping up, what else do you do personally besides all the professional stuff? What are your hobbies and pastimes?
So as for today, I'm also working with a few business partners in growing a healthy beverage business, which is a kombucha. It's called Core Culture Lab, which we're making it. All the beverage are made of rainwater because we're trying to help Bali from the dryness of the land. So that's what we're trying to do right now. We are trying to distribute it more and maybe expand it to Jakarta, because right now we're still selling it in Bali. And maybe later on to the US, who knows?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love to ask people usually at this point just to take us back. You obviously have a story to tell, and I don't even know all of it. I know a little bit of it, but most of it I still don't know. So I'm going to hear it at the same time as our listeners, so to speak. But what was your religious background growing up? I do know you went to a private Christian university. Maybe when you bring in that part of your story, tell us a little bit about what it was like going to a Christian school. But what did you believe in growing up?
So actually, I was born Catholic before. My mom was Catholic, my dad Protestant, and I think along the way, my mom switched to be Protestant. But I grew up in a Catholic school, a very strict Catholic school. Like Christian university don't have anything to do with the whole trauma, but I would say that the Catholic school was pretty crazy. And it was also known as one of the most strict school back in the days, private school as well. And I think I went to Catholic school for like 6 to 12 years in a row, something like that, where every day you go to school scared because of the teachers are very they're so fierce, right? They have all these nonsense rules at school as well, and if you don't do the things that they wanted, sometimes they beat you up, or stuff like that still happen. It was around the 90s. I'm now 37, so it was probably around 90, 92, 3, something like that.
Were the teachers and administrators actually priests and nuns, or were they just lay people that worked there?
They're just regular people that work there, but the head school was a nun. Yeah. And she was also one of the most fierce. And we were all scared of her back then.
It's almost a cliche. You do see it in some shows, and you hear people talk about, the nun that gets out the ruler and smacks your hand real hard. Did you actually get that kind of treatment?
Yes. And some of the teachers, they would throw that rulers from like across the room and just hit somebody with it. And I was like, oh my God, I was so stressed out. I think going to school was a scary thing back then. And I think actually university and high school was better in the Christian school, because Christian school are way more relaxed and chill, compared to Catholic private school. Scary. I will never.
Well, that's good. Glad it got a little better. What? Yeah. Before we go to the Protestant school, just for the Catholic side of it, you said your mom was a Catholic when you were growing up?
Yeah, she was.
Okay. And was your dad in the picture?
Yeah, but he was Christian, so he never really went with us to church back then.
Okay. So you all were doing two different things. Just curious, when you were in the Catholic school, in the Catholic church, what were the main teachings that you remember? What did they tell you about things like what God was like, about the Bible, about bringing the Pope and, the other sources of authority and of truth? And, what did they teach you about in the Catholic Church about how to have a relationship with God?
Now, that's the most interesting thing for me, because I don't think the Catholic taught me anything about God, relationship with God, religion itself. It's more just rituals, right? Like, this is how you do, like you wake up in the morning and then you do like this ritual, and then you have to pray, and then you have to sing or whatever. But then there's nothing. I never got any teaching about, religion, or how to kind of do it properly, have your relationship with God. So I think I got it more later on in life, when my mom, started off on 6th grade, where my mom switched or shifted into Christianity because of, I don't know, I think somebody actually told her about, you have to be saved. I don't know which evangelist actually came to her. I can't really remember, because I was still too small, I think 6th grade. But I remember she suddenly, it's like there's a button switched on, and then she was suddenly really active in the whole Christianity thing.
She got born again.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
That's pretty much, yeah, that's the experience I would recognize as well. Yeah, you get
yeah,
serious about God, knowing he's very serious about you.
yes,
He's did everything he had to do to make a way, and now it's time for the preacher to do his job and say, you got to get serious. This is a life and death and eternity situation, and
yes.
you get the right mix, and people get on fire. They get on fire for that, and they really realize they feel like, yeah, I'm finally taking life seriously. It sounds like that's possibly what was, that dynamic. I could easily imagine that. Do you remember if there was like an actual, I don't know what they would call it, but like a revival kind of service where they, like sometimes here in America they'll have even tents where they'll just get these big like circus tents, but they're just for people to sit in.
Oh yeah.
Would they have that kind of thing there? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The altar call, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
Like when everybody just goes to the front and then they all would just pray and cry and admit I'm a sinner and I needed to be saved and all that. Yeah, totally. And my mom even went to like a Bible school, and then I did go to a Bible school as well for years.
Hmm.
Years.
Was that just for her to get generally educated in the Bible, or was there like a specific ministry kind of goal? Like, if I do this degree, I can become a missionary or have some kind of role in the church?
I think it's both. It's for
Okay.
both. And by that time, my mom pretty much spread the gospel to like the whole family, like grandparents, her brothers and sisters, who now all became like a pretty hardcore Christian, right? Because yeah,
Do you
my
remember about
dad.
what age you were when that started?
It started when I was on 6th grade, so I was around 12, I think. I was around 12. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's when it all started. And I would go with my mom to her Bible studies, and I was a kid, and then everybody loved me there, and then everybody, and then I felt at the very beginning I was actually happy there, right? Before I realized, like what the doctrines were. That's why I went to the Bible school for for children, and yeah, it was like every week after, oh sorry, every weekend I think after school on Friday we all had to go there, and then on Saturday there's this youth ministry, yeah, where I had to go. So I really did grow up with that whole thing.
Hmm.
And but then the church that we go in, the Reformed Injili, was, if you googled him, his name is Stephen Tong. He's one of the biggest church leader in Indonesia, and he is one of the most fierce and very strict Christian.
Hmm.
So, and his preaching has always been like, oh yeah, because God sacrificed himself, and you also need to like sacrifice yourself. You also need to feel his pain. So it's always about like pain being Christian. It's not always rainbow and butterflies, blah blah blah. And now, as I thought of it, I mean, the God already died for you. Then why do you always want to suffer? I
Hmm.
just, I hate it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's a
Oh,
great point, and that I appreciate you bringing it up, because it's a big issue, because people really do get duped into thinking that their suffering, number one, is part of some master plan, and
yeah.
number two, that it's bringing God glory, so we rejoice in it. And I remember, I don't know if you remember hearing this or reading this, but Christopher Hitchens used to talk a lot about this with Mother Teresa, where she was praised by so many people, and he was like, she would go to these women who were very, very poor and who had no real access to be able to control how many kids they had and all that, and she would just say stuff like have just take care of your kids, have these kids, but understand that the suffering that's happening because of this poverty is part of God's plan. And people would just praise her for encouraging people to see God in all this suffering. And in reality, what she was doing was perpetuating the this situation where, instead she could have been saying, hey, women, you have the power to control, how many children you have. You have the power to get more educated, and therefore you can get out of this poverty and stop this suffering. And instead she kind of helped people just kind of stay in it and not lift themselves out of it. And it's amazing. That's just one of many ways that ideology poisons the well for us, but it's such a huge topic.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. There's just too many. Ask me questions, then I'll tell you, because I don't even know where to start.
Well, can I ask, since I'm talking about the issue of empowering women, let me just put this plug in for one of the things I read about you, is that your passion is to empower and educate and inspire women, to love themselves, to be awakened to the power of self-improvement. I know you've talked a lot about things like meditation, self-acceptance. It sounds like a lot of your stuff, if I could sum it up in some other words, is you're really talking about people being much more healthy and much less toxic in their worldview, in their beliefs, in their practice than they were when they were in religion. And that a lot of this is about transforming your mind. And I guess I'd ask, like, for people that are stuck in some of these ideologies, what role does religion play in women's lives, as far as you've experienced and you've seen? Like, does religion help women at all? Does it hurt them? And like, what do women need to, if they really want to be aware of what's not just the surface of, there's a church building, there's services, there's ministries, but just the ideologies and how it plays out in your mind and your family and your world and your culture. Like, what do women need to be aware of if they really want to be healthy as it relates to some of these issues of what the church's message is?
Yeah. Okay. Well, especially I think in Indonesia, right? Because we have 5 different religions here, plus cultures, and it all plays big roles, I would say. There was a case, let's say, this is just an example. One of our governor got a divorce. He is one Christian guy that everybody was praising, basically, but he got a divorce and he remarried, right? And then suddenly I heard, like, in churches, or even my family was talking about this guy, saying, or about the woman, actually, about the ex-wife. It's like, she could have, tried harder, not get a divorce. And I told him, I was like, well, if the guy cheated, or if the guy chose to not want to be with her anymore, why would she even try? Like, it's very toxic when you're trying too hard to keep a relationship when the other one doesn't want it anymore. I don't care if he's Christian or not. I don't care what religion it is. You have to have your self-respect, but basically, to move on from toxic relationship, move on from toxic workplace, to move on from toxic friendship, like, stuff like that. But then in religion, which I know not only Christian teaches that, in the other 4 religions that I know, they always said that you have to respect the man. You have to, when you got married, it's, you have to put this is for Muslim, if I'm not mistaken. You have to, like, the man is like the leader, and then you have to follow whatever it is that he wants. With the Christianity, once you get married, you cannot get divorced, right? It's like, kind of the mindset is like, if you got a divorce, then it's a sin. And then what happens to the kids? The kids want you to get divorced. If you are toxic, they don't want you to stay together, and then really messed up their mindset about love one day in the future. And things like that I see happens a lot of time. I think all over the world, but probably what I see from where I'm from, cultures and religions play a big role. And I think it's very toxic when somebody don't want to get a divorce with somebody because you're afraid of being burned in hell. But the fact is, you are living hell right now when you're not with somebody that you love, when that person is actually beating you up. And I remember, my Christian family was like, but there's God, and you have to believe that God will change that person. No, it's not how it is. And it just angers me so much, whenever they said that. And I was like, no, it's not like that. You need to have self-respect first, know how you need to be, or you deserve to be treated a certain way. And if they don't treat you the way you deserve it, walk away.
Yeah.
Like, no drama. Walk away and claim what you deserve, because you will find it, but not like that. And especially not because you're scared that you're going to be burned in hell.
Yeah.
I think that's very toxic, very toxic.
Very well said. And I was just going to go down one little point with you here too, that you touched on, this idea of the woman obeying or submitting to the man. That very much is a Christian teaching for most Christians that I've come across. I'm sure there's some that would try to give a different spin on it, but this idea that it's basically like the idea of submission, and it's a way of, for a woman in this ideology, which we obviously oppose, but that is, you submit to the man, you're actually partaking in a much bigger structure of the authority that God has established for all of his, all the people basically, and it meaning God the Father is the head, and Christ the Son, Jesus, he is, even though they're one, he has ranked himself, in a sense, under God, and said, I will submit to your will, meaning, first and foremost, the gospel, that I will suffer and die and receive the wrath for the sinners should get, but I'll submit my will, not my will, but yours be done. And like Christ prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. But then underneath that, you have this idea of, well, there's God, there's Christ, and then it's like Christ is giving direction to the man, who's giving direction to his family, starting with his wife. And when you're in it, it's obviously sounds like, of course, I want to submit myself to God. I, as the man, want to be the leader, not because I want to be powerful, but because I want to obey God and be a good leader. And of course, as a woman, I want to do it God's way and submit to the man. But number one, it's not real. There's no God, there's no Jesus. They're mythology. So the whole structure is based on a phantom, on a nothing. But then even if you didn't, even for people that aren't quite at that point where they're like, well, maybe there's still some kind of God, maybe atheism isn't where it's at. You can just look at this stuff and say, you're demeaning women so much by doing this. Like, what part of you thinks it's okay to tell a woman you have to obey this man, you're equal, like you are not, there is no subservience that's appropriate here. People need to be selfless and kind of rank themselves voluntarily and say, I will, I'll wash the dishes, I'll, do this, I'll clean this, I'll do it voluntarily. But to say you have to submit to someone else's will, that's just, it blows my mind that it's still even an issue. Like, can we not see how toxic this is? And it plays out in our politics, where very few women are really allowed to go so high in politics, and even in a country like America, and certainly in corporate America, it comes out too. But just in the all these interactions, and it really, I guess this is my question: why do women not see this as more toxic than they do? Meaning that women in church are often proud to pass it on to their kids. Is like, do you think that when women are in Christianity, that it seems like the right thing to do and it's safe, or do you think some of them are seeing its toxicity and just passing it on because they're afraid of bucking the system?
I think they're brainwashed the way I was before as well, because I felt like, because I was a very strict Christian until like 2000, until I moved to New York. It's where I started deconstructing, shifting, actually, not even deconstructing yet. I was just trying to figure out, because when I left for New York in 2014, I remember it was because I was so sick being in Jakarta with all these religion stuff. Like, the country itself already overdosed with its own religion, and then my family with their own religion. And then I'm like, I need to get out of here and just figure it out on my own. Like, who am I really? Like, what do I believe? And then I felt like back then I was so brainwashed that I believed in those things, but then I also remembered why I was doing it. It's because I was scared of hell. So it was fear-based faith. It wasn't even because of love. It wasn't even because of, this is what I believe, this is why I'm doing it, and I'm doing it because I want it voluntarily, because I'm happy doing it. No, because I was too scared. What if I died and then I go to hell, and stuff like that. So I felt like it's the brainwashing, especially because I was in it since I was 12, maybe even younger than that before. I can't even remember. But I think that's the danger of religion, because when your family is very strict, they would pretty much kind of brainwash you into it as well, without them realizing that it is actually brainwashing, because they're also being brainwashed by the church or by the whatever religion that they're into, right? So I feel like I had to have my own strength to kind of question things again, because that's how I started. Because I started questioning it again. I was like, is it really, if God is love, is that what he wants? If God is love, if I do this and that, would he really burn me to hell? If God is really love, then why would he give people sexual desire? And then some people are married, some people are not married. And for those who aren't married, then it's a sin for them to have sexual intercourse. And then I was like, I don't know, doesn't sit right with me. And I was like, I need to figure it out. I need to know, like, so what do I believe? And that's when I left for New York and I met my first life coach. And then I had a one-on-one with her. And that's when, like, I kind of realized where all these belief system that I had. And then it's like, I already have like a new belief wanting to enter like my mind, but then like this one was still too strong, and I'm like, which one do I believe? Which one? And then having like a professional help there really helped me though.
Can I ask, just going back a few steps, was there a particular time when you were younger that you actually made what I call like a profession of faith, where you responded to an altar call or prayed with your friends or family or something, where we used to call it in a really simplistic sense, asking Jesus into your heart, which isn't really a biblical expression, but just something where you're actually saying the verses from the Bible, if you believe in Jesus as your savior, as your rescuer from your sin, that he took your sins on himself and rose again, that you will in fact be saved if you really believe that. Was there a time when you made that profession okay? Do you remember about what age you were when that occurred?
I think it was around 12, not long after my mom, maybe 13. Nah, I believe it was 12. Yeah.
What would have happened if, do you think, and this is all, conjecture, but what do you think would have happened if you had said early on, I don't believe this is true? And maybe if it was too early, they would have just, given you freedom to kind of keep listening to the sermons and keep reading your Bible. But what if you continued in that for a couple of years? What would have happened with your family and community if you had just never accepted Jesus? Like, would they have been really angry? Would they have been disappointed? Would you have been ostracized, or would it have been okay-ish to some extent? Like, how would that have worked?
I think disappointed. Like, even today, as I told them where I am, the fight continues, kind of. To this day, still happening.
Do you yourself experience, or do you know of anyone who's experienced like a shunning of sorts, where they kind of cut you off in some ways? Is there anything like that occurs?
I've never really heard of it from my friends who are Christian or in a Christian family, but with the other religion here, oh yeah. They do. With the other religion.
So going back to your story a little bit, so you placed your faith in Christ around 12. Do you remember what it felt like? Did you feel happy and peaceful? A sense of, wow, I figured life out. Life's about having a right relationship with God through Jesus. There might be other things in life I mess up, but the big thing, I got it. I got peace with God. Did it feel like that? Peace, or what was it?
No, and to be honest with you, I just had that thought a few days ago because I was thinking, I was like, what was life before now? What was life before now? I'm free to believe whatever I want to believe, at least in my head. Even if people disagree with me, I don't care now. But back then, I was just trying to think of how did I feel? Actually, nothing. I didn't feel any difference. I didn't feel anything the way my mom felt. I think it actually worked for her, but it just didn't work for me. So I was just kind of I play along with it because I thought it is the way it was supposed to be. But when I did it, like altar calls, and I was active in like church community, blah blah blah. For me, it was more to like being social.
Hmm.
It has nothing to do with the God itself because I just didn't feel any different. And I think it kind of hit me, I think around 20, I can't remember, maybe 27, I think about 10 years ago, when I realized that I was deep into depression and anxiety, and praying just didn't help anymore. That's when I realized that this is really not working. This is nothing worked.
Hmm.
Like all these Bible quotes, all these Bible thingy that I read, all the prayers didn't make the depression and anxiety went away. It go away. It stays there, and I was still anxious and I was still afraid, and I think I got even more scared because I thought, you know, life is already pretty shitty, and then I'm gonna die and I'm gonna go to hell. Like that's even worse. It's just like double the shit in my head, you know?
Yeah, it's a good point though, because the Bible is pretty clear that the joy of the Lord is our strength, and that He gives us peace that passes all understanding. I think it's First Peter says, after you've suffered for a while, He will strengthen and settle you. You do get this sense that there's going to be, so I think, one of the fruits of the Spirit is peace, if I'm not mistaken, from Ephesians, is that right? I need to get back to my Bible, not because I want to read it for the Christian sense, but just so I can make sure I'm quoting verses correctly. But
Yeah.
it does talk about this piece, and for a lot of people, that cognitive dissonance of like, this doesn't make sense. And I think even another aspect to it that's really interesting is the whole idea of God's will, where whether you think you've got peace or not, often you think, all right, I'm going to pray for God's will. Should I go to this college or that college? Should I date this person, that person? Should I, live here or there? Should I take this job, that job? Um, Most people are not crazy like, well, should I buy the red car or the blue car? But for the big stuff, especially relationships and where you live, they're going to really pray and just bring it to the altar. Like, God, I want to listen to your voice. I want to be sensitive to your leading. If you need me to move this to this way or that way, send someone to make it clear. Open a door. Shut doors that shouldn't be open. Just guide me. And then when something happens, two things about it. Number one, they feel like, oh, well, the door opened, it must be God, which is like, well, people have, I've heard so many stories where they heard, God speaking and saying, go this way, not that way, and they went that way, and it blew up in their face. I personally experienced it. It blows up in your face. You're like, what in the world happened? I thought you were guiding me. But then the other thing, especially that it gets to me, is the relationship side of it. And maybe have you, reflect on this too, is people often in the Christian world are building their relationships, men and women, when they're looking for a spouse, they're basing it on, number one, are we spiritually compatible? Meaning, are we both very committed to the Lord and to serving Him with our lives, to preaching the gospel and living it? And then secondarily, they're basing it, and for at least a lot of people I know, on this actual specific goal of ministry. Like, can we actually go to the mission field together, or work in a church environment together? Can we be partners in ministry? And what sickens me about it is it really, number one, it's all based on this false premise of this make believe God. But and mythology, but also you don't actually get to know, are we really compatible? Like it's always, are we compatible in the sense of we both are submissive to this mythology of Christianity, the cult of Christianity, not are we actually compatible? Like, do we actually want the same things? It's like, do we both want Jesus more than we want anything else? Okay, well then we're compatible. And it's like, that's not reality. And I've seen relationships where they break down because when people realize this isn't real, and even people that aren't deconstructing to where they're leaving their faith, they're just realizing there needed to be so much more than just, do we both want to go to church and love Jesus and, raise little armies of children to be soldiers for Christ. Like, you need to actually be compatible completely apart from religion. And do you just get the sense that some of this stuff really kind of messes with people's minds?
Oh,
Is there
yeah.
searching?
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. I have a very interesting story. This is just one of the stories, but so like I said before, in Indonesia, 90% is Muslim, right? And then the 10% is the rest of the four religions. So imagine how hard it is to actually meet up Christian and Christian. Mostly you're going to meet up with Muslim.
Yep.
That's what happened to me in the past. So basically I had it was quite a long relationship. It was more than a year, but then we kind of went back and forth without commitment for like almost 5 years because of religion. Everything about us was compatible. It was like a great relationship based on friendship before. And then we both talked about this because I wasn't me today. I was still that person that was brainwashed by religion. And with him, it was his family, because he was more open-minded. He was like, well, if we want to get married, we can just go like overseas and then we do it there. Because in Indonesia, you cannot get married in a different religion as well. They
Really?
wouldn't. They're not gonna admit that it's a legal thing. So you have to do it overseas if one of them. Yeah, if you're different, basically.
That's
so it's very interesting, right?
Well, it's just interesting that that governments feel like they have the authority to mess with people's love lives. Anyway.
Yeah, that happened here. And so we talked about it. It was like, okay, what are we gonna do? And then I kind of remember his mom was talking to me, asking whether or not I wanted to convert. I'm like, hell no. Back then I was like, are you kidding me? That's not gonna happen. And so we both actually decided then this is not gonna work out, right? This is not going to work out because, like you said, he's not going to be doing all his ministries together with me. We're not going to go to the church together. And I think for him and his family that I wouldn't ever, going to be Muslim either. It happens a lot here, like that kind of, relationship broken up because of different
Do you know some people that have switched religions, at least on paper?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, it happened a lot as well. And, and when you do that, people will talk about it. Go, oh my God, he actually, convert to other religions so that, he or she sold his God for this, just a person. Like, what? But, whatever make them happy, please. But I remember my mindset back then when we broke up, because I decided, I was like, this is not going to work, right? I thought in my head, Christ sacrificed himself for me. And now I'm just sacrificing this love life. It's nothing, that when I remember that, I was so pissed off today. It's like, oh my God, what did I do? But it's
amazing.
Okay. Lesson learned.
Yeah. Well, what happened next then? So you were obviously, again, Catholic school. Your mom got converted to Protestantism. You got caught up in that as well. Your extended family got caught up in that. So you're living this Christian life. It doesn't feel quite like the power that you thought was going to be there from God is there, the peace, the power. whatever you call it. And so take us to the next step. What happened as you moved to the United States? I mean, which is in and of itself, I mean, that's obvious why you deconverted. You know, we're so pagan here. We're so, you know, such bad sinners that we're so worldly. We pulled you out. But so you come to the United States, you get under this life coach, and it sounds like you started to pick some things apart. What happened next as you're starting with the life coach, and where did that thought process take you?
So, because I was trying to figure out who I actually am without the whole doctrines and dogmas and religion. I was just trying to, peel it off and really figure out who am I really? What do I love? Why am I so depressed and anxious? It was the question, right? Why? And then I realized when she walked me through it, go back to the, childhood past, blah, blah, blah. It's because I could never be myself. Whatever that I wanted, it's, you have to always ask God, right? Like the
Yep.
teaching, like, okay, I want to be this person. Yeah, but if you're being, let's say, I want to be a bartender. Yeah, but you're serving alcohol to people and they're going to get drunk. And so sin. It's a sin.
Yep.
Okay, I want to be a dancer. Yeah, but if I dance then to the music that, the music itself don't serve your God, then everything was just, I was kind of put in a box where I just can't decide what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, because everything was sin. Everything. So I was so just depressed about it. I just didn't know what to do with my life anymore. Career wise, I was doing pretty good back then. Like I have a TV show that was stripping every day. I have a radio show altogether stripping every day. So everything was great, but that I didn't feel good. I was just like, then what? What if I got an offer, a TV show, but then it was a late night show and then we have to talk about, let's say, sex. That's impossible. What if, all these what ifs. So I just thought, then what do I have to do? It's like, I really just don't know what to do anymore. I was so scared. And there's also, I felt I cannot decide what I want. I do not know who I am. And then it just, all this submission to religion, how church always says that, we don't actually deserve God's love, and because we're sinners. It plays a big role in me believing in myself, believing in my worth, all that. It really just messed me up on that note. And I always thought I was broken because you were told you were broken, right? You're a broken vessel. You're, without God, you cannot be fixed. So I was always thinking that I'm broken and I'm just not worthy and blah, 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 until my life coach was like, nothing is broken. Nothing is wrong with you. You are perfect.
That must have been mind-boggling to start to hear messages like that. Would you agree with the idea that because of the Christian worldview being so prevalent in your background, that it's hard to receive those messages? It's like, I get, we all have seen those movies where, there's maybe a girl that's absolutely beautiful, but something's happening. She just feels so ugly, and and it takes some outsider to say, oh no, you're really beautiful. And they just they can't receive it because they're so preconditioned to no, everyone else told you you're ugly. So when this, your prince finally comes and says, no, you're actually beautiful, it's like, it doesn't really matter that they said it. You've heard so many times, no, you're actually quite, horrible, that you can't, the message can't get through at first. It takes some time for the walls to break down. And as people began to talk to you about your worth and you're not being broken, did you feel like you were able to receive it, or did it take a while for you to really think through what that meant and how it would change you?
I think to this day, I am still trying to kind of shift that mindset, because sometimes without even me realizing it, I went back to the whole unworthiness, like suddenly I felt like, oh, crap, like I really want this job, but then, somebody else is probably better than me. And then my friends like, are you freaking crazy or what? Like, you have a decade experience and then you can still say that. And when they said that, and then I realized, oh my God, there you go. Here I go again, going back without even me realizing it. Well, most of the time I already kind of claim my power back, but sometimes it still plays a role. Like even in relationship as well. Sometimes I felt like I didn't have the power to let them know how I feel or what I need, what I want in relationship, because of the whole submission to the man or whatever that was. It was really hard. And I think that's why I'm so angry at this. And I'm still angry. Maybe 30% I am kind of okay with it, but I still have that 70% burning anger in my heart that I still need to figure out how to process it and let it go. Because every time I thought, okay, I can deal with this part, let's say, I can coexist with my parents and all the religious people around me. But when they start quoting Bible or something, I'm pissed off all over again. And then I'm just angry. That just happened a week ago with my dad, with my parents, where I just started screaming and just couldn't contain myself, basically, because I was just like, I don't know what to do.
So they still are believers then, it sounds like, and they want you to come back to the church, to the Lord.
I think I think my mom is in a denial stage or something. At the beginning, when I told them, I don't believe in this thing anymore, and all the cryings and the fightings because of that. And like, where do you think you're gonna go when you die? I don't care. When I'm dead, I'm dead. I really don't care. It's done. Wherever I'm going, yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
I care what's happening today, because I need to be in the moment and take care of my mental health. Since I moved to Bali, and I am way more authentic than I was before, I barely had panic attacks. I've never got depressed anymore, just because I can be who I wanted to be. I do things that I love, and then I can just admit to people, this is what I believe, this is how I want to go about my life, this is what I want to do, and then I just start deciding things because I want it, and it's just so liberating. But then, when I posted in the group that I repost, what's her name, Elena or something, She Is Risen. Yeah. That's when my dad texted me. It's like, Mama's crying because you posted that. You shouldn't post things like that. And it just ticked me off that day. I was like, so you can post about your God and I can't. How is that fair? If you can do that, I can do that too, because that's what I believe. But she's an evangelist, and she, worked for the church, and then, it's her name. Why is it her name? Why isn't it my name? She has her own name. She can, she can hold her own. I need to hold my own. And no, you cannot just like tell me what to do anymore. I'm freaking 37. Stop it. And that's when I just lost it again. And it was like a 7 days of just having a bad mood because of this, like trying to figure out again, how is it really, why is it still affecting me so much? When like my dad said it, I just explode. It's like, almost back to square one all over again with them. And then, trying to rebuild the parents-daughter relationship again afterwards. Well, we're kind of okay again now. But, they will never say sorry when it comes to religion. So it's going to have to be me accepting it as it is. Like, all right, I accept you as you are, and I'm still going to be me. Basically, I'm still going to be me. You're not going to change me. So have me or not.
You bring up so many good points. I'm not sure if we were to start to reflect on it and comment back. But one of the things that I love is what you kind of just said in the last 2 minutes about being angry. And I think a lot of atheists that I've come across, they do go through an anger phase, and a lot of us, it kind of passes quickly.
Yeah.
But for some people it doesn't. And I think people feel like they feel like they should be kind of past that, like they should pass it quickly. And like they should just kind of feel like, okay, I've, do your grieving process, like you realize that the God you were worshiping is pretend, it's make believe, it's all mythology. But it's like it felt real, so it's like a funeral. You go through your funeral, you kind of get your tears out, and you move on. You have a grieving process, and then you're done. And it's not like that. Like what the anger, number one, is very justified. People literally stole your time. They stole your ability to just decide for yourself what's right and what you believe about reality. But I love bringing it to the kind of parallel picture of autonomy, where like if you were to, for example, I've got a little girl. I've got two little girls, but one of them just a baby. But I've got one that's like, 4 years old, so she can talk. And I know that if we had someone in our world, we don't, but if we had someone in our world who was just like, like you hear these these stories of the uncle or somebody that comes over and just wants to hug and hug, and he's really touchy, and a little girl might say, no, I don't want to hug. You'd want to be the kind of parents that say to the little girl, you have complete autonomy. You get to choose who gives you a hug. If you don't want a hug from Uncle so-and-so, then that's exactly what's going to happen, is you don't have to get that hug. You can protect, your body is yours. You get to say no. And when you say no, no means no. But, and to a lot of us in this culture, that's very clear and it's very obvious. It's very base level. Your body is yours. And instilling that in our kids is a very normal and appropriate, healthy choice to give them that autonomy. But we don't translate it to thought autonomy, where we say, if somebody wants to pressure you into believing something, and especially if they threaten you with hell or with any kind of ostracization of the community, or just this shame, like, oh, shame on you for not believing like we do, you're basically doing something very similar, where you're saying, your body is not, as if you were to say to a little girl, no, Uncle so-and-so can hug you as much as he wants, don't push him away. How inappropriate that would be. But it's equally inappropriate to say, you need to let Pastor so-and-so and your Sunday school teacher and your parents, they need to be able to control your thoughts now. They need to go beyond your body autonomy to your actual thought. And I know that Christopher Hitchens used to talk about, North Korea being very much like this total control. But Christianity is like, God, number one, is in control, where he can see inside your mind and he sees every dirty thought you have. But on top of that, you have just the visible community saying, you have to conform, you have to let us control you. And just the sickness of that people can't even see that is beyond, it's just staggering to be honest. It's honestly staggering. When you look at that, what do you think it would take for people around you, loved ones and friends, for them to be able to let it go and to stop pressuring you into trying to believe in mythology?
Oh my God. I think with the last fight, I literally said it 100 times. I was like, I gave up on this, I'm not even going to try anymore. Like, whatever, do whatever you want. I'm just not going to respond every time that I disagree with you. I'm just not going to respond anymore. And I just felt the need to take back my power. Every time they made me that angry, I know that the power is in their hands. So I need to try and take it back and just not, I don't want to be affected by it anymore. But like you said, feeling that why I'm so angry is I felt like years of my life was just, kind of thrown away, betrayed by the whole BS that turns out it's not true, was told that A is B, B is C, and then nothing is actually real. And back in the days when I was maybe 7 or something, I loved doing belly dancing, and I was also in the karate club. And then I had to give it up, believe it or not, because there was one pastor or one priest came to our house and then said that, karate is basically violence and God is against violence, so you can't do that anymore. And Bali dancing is actually a Hindu culture, which is Hinduism culture. And whenever they dance, they're actually praising their gods. And I had to give it up as a kid. It was a thing that I loved doing. I was so angry when I realized that all these things were not real. I could have been an athlete right now, or maybe one of the, well-known belly dancer or whatever. It just didn't happen because you took it away from me. That's how I feel. I'm still feeling it. I'm still so angry. And I felt like if I meet that priest, I would say it on his face. I would just like, dude, you suck. You're crazy, you're a freak, I hate you. I will say that because that's what I feel. And I'm so angry at that. Still feel it.
It's amazing too that they would discourage you from violence because of, not that karate is meant to be violent. Karate is, I think, meant to be also protective.
Self-defense, yeah.
Yeah, self-defense. But like, if he were in that conversation using the excuse of, well, this is violence and God's against violence, that's just not true. Like, it's not biblical. God talks about genocide over and over. He talks about slaughtering people. Certainly he himself slaughtered people, including, not that he actually did it, this isn't real, but in terms of what the Bible says in the mythology, it says he slaughtered everybody but Noah and his family in the flood. And with Moses and Joshua, again, fictional characters, but in the story he says, go in and slaughter everybody. This is your land, take it in my name. Kill everybody, kill the moms and the dads and the little boys, but keep the virgin girls to your, keep them alive. Let's do little child brides while we're at it. This is extremely violent, and it's crazy that he would go down that route. Can I ask, while we're talking about some of the dynamics here that might be really hard to swallow, what this means, the implications of all these. We've talked a little bit about sexuality a couple times, but could you talk us through what your churches and just your community's culture was like with what we call here purity culture, shame culture, ultra modesty is what some people call it. What did that look like for you? And if could I ask too, as you're talking about it, if you saw anyone in your world that didn't fall in line with that, like for example, if you knew a friend that was 15 and she wasn't married, she was expecting a baby, like as a Christian, what happens to someone like that in that Christian community where she's clearly, going against the rules and had sex out of marriage, and whether she's pregnant or not, she's clearly lost her virginity. What did virginity mean to that culture? And even if you don't have any stories like that, just what is modesty culture like for you?
Oh my God, I had a purity ring. I threw it away.
Okay. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, what is a purity ring?
Purity ring is when you promise that you will never gonna have sex before marriage, right? It's like purity ring. Like the Jonas Brothers was, one of them.
That's your church initiates that kind of program?
I think it was actually from my university. It was the university who had that, because it was a Christian university as well, right? The funny thing is with my friends back then, most of my friends are Christians, and most of them are not really doing it, not doing the purity culture, even though they pretend that they were. They pretend that.
So they were being sexually active as far as you know?
Yeah. Back then they were. And it was kind of like things that we keep on a hush hush, and then, in front of the church, we're all like the holy kids. I mean, we're not doing anything like that. But no, come on, like all of my friends, I know them so well. And as for me, again, this is why I'm so angry. I held it for so long, the longest probably amongst all of them, until I realized that no, this is my body. This is my body and I can experience whatever I wanted to experience. And that's when it just hits me. I was like, what the hell am I doing? Why I'm shaming myself not to like have those kind of desires, not to have that kind of feelings, and thinking that it was actually dirty when it's not. It's just you. It's your body. It's biological needs. It's fine. It's okay. And I had to, kind of switch my mindset. And it took a while until I could actually believe that no, it's not a sin. It's
Mm.
okay. But you have to take care and take responsibility for yourself. Like, it's not that I have to sleep with everyone who I see, but like when you're in a relationship with somebody and you guys are in love and there's a commitment, blah blah blah, it's okay to experience that. And it was something that I had to like kind of deconstruct within myself. It's different with my friends who just rebel. They're fine. They don't have the scar. I do, because I really believed in that. I really believed in that. And that's when I was like, damn it.
Did it include the sense of like, was there a, how should I phrase it? Like, was there a period where it took you a while to get rid of the shame, or was that immediate, or was it like where some people can volitionally choose and say, I know, in my mind that this is not sin, that there is no such thing as sin because there's no God. There is no sin. So this isn't a sinful act, but because you're so preconditioned to it, even though you could technically go through with a physical act of incredible love and intimacy and beauty, that there'd still be, for some people, it take a while to process that. It's still, you still feel dirty, you still feel shameful, because you've been kind of preconditioned to say there's no way you can go down that road and be honoring God. If you go down that road, even in your mind, let alone in practice, you're clearly giving God every reason to condemn you and to say shame on you. And when you add to it, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but in preaching, they would talk about like, you need to see that every sin you do is like you're taking the hammer, and if you have Jesus up with the nail, it's like every time you sin, you're pounding it in. You're making Jesus's body flinch from the pain that you're doing. Like it's almost like you're actively crucifying him again every time you do something. And so when you get that background, I would think for a lot of people, even if you can intellectually say, I know that's not real, that it just, you can't flip that switch just like that and say, okay, I'll go enjoy myself and be healthy and get rid of the toxicity. It's like, no, it's got its roots deep in you, deep in your psyche.
I think for me to start kind of, questioning whether or not it's real took years. But when the light bulb, suddenly switched on, me realizing that no, this is BS. I don't believe in that. It's just suddenly just gone. But then I already wasted like years of my life, like 20 something years, like not, kind of restrict myself from all of those loveful act just because I thought it's just wrong. It's a sin. And then I didn't have the power over my own body and my own decision again. And that's when I told myself, I was like, nah, this is not it. That's when I decided that, it's okay and I can own it. Thankfully. It's just the anger that is still there again. Like, what have I done? Like all these years wasted away. Although I'm trying to think of it, just so that I'm not as angry. I was like, okay, maybe religion did a little bit of good. At least it made me a good person back then. At least I'm not like an asshole or something. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not like just a good person in general, even though it messed me up inside. But as a person in general, I think I was good. Now it's time for me for the rest of my life to to decide everything on my own. And speaking of that culture again, I remember there was a woman in like a church community. It's not in the church, but a community outside the church, she got pregnant, but I don't know if it's because she was having sex with a boyfriend or a fling or whatever. But she was too scared because she was pregnant. She said that she was being raped.
Hmm.
I think it wasn't the case. I think it was just, just a fling, and then she got pregnant, but she was too scared. Even that, I think the community didn't believe her. She was kind of been exiled for a while,
Hmm.
like I was also angry with them. I was like, I thought you guys are Christian, and if you are Christian people, you're supposed to have compassion and love, and that's exactly the opposite. When you exile someone like that, when they need you the most, you're not a good person. That's what I told them, and I just whatever, I walked away. I was like, nah.
Yeah, it's so true though, and I'm a good case in point too for that in terms of my channel. I get nasty emails from Christians every day. I mean, not a day doesn't go by, and it's like I get a lot more emails that say, thank you, and this is good, and keep at it kind of stuff. But I get a lot of nasty stuff from Christians, and it's like, so you're the most gracious, loving, kind people in the world. And of course, their excuse is, well, no, the most loving thing we can do is to pull you back from hell, from the flames. So, we would be unloving if we kind of coddled you and kind of gave you soft messages. We're giving you harsh messages because you need tough love to get out of your, you know, um, uh, deception of not being willing to, believe in the gospel anymore. But it's interesting. Can I ask, what to wrap up the sexuality question too? What was it like just in terms of modesty? Was like not every Christian area in our country is like this, but in certain pockets of the subculture of Christianity there's a lot of rigidity in terms of like, number one, for a lot of girls, they have to wear skirts, pants are not allowed. Or, even if that's allowed, skirts certainly can't be short, it can't be a low cut blouse or anything. This what we would call ultra modesty movement. Was there a sense that was prevalent in your culture, or was it a little bit different?
No, it was actually pretty modern when it comes to like what you wear.
Okay.
It's okay. But at church, the Reformed church, you have to. I think you have to wear a skirt if you want to. No jeans, like no jeans. It's like proper clothing if you want to go to church because you're gonna see God, right?
Sunday best. Wear your Sunday best. Could we've talked, we've both said in different ways that we would say at this point it's not real, and I don't think we've really crossed that bridge yet in terms of the details. What was it that, not just the sense of this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel healthy, but what did you, when you got to a point, I'm presuming here, but at some point you had to make a decision. There has to be a crossroads. Either this is real and I need to, get back to Christ, because otherwise I'm just being worldly and I'm kind of wasting my life when it should be focused on Christ and his kingdom. Or this isn't real and I need to, walk away from it and then kind of relearn, open my eyes for the first time. That decision point though requires a little bit of, unwrapping certain topics, unraveling, going down different philosophical trails. Some of it's just learning certain aspects of certain issues, whether it's a theological issue or an issue just like how did they put the Bible together, like who picked which books, any of those issues. As you began to realize that you were at a decision point, what kind of issues did you think through, and what did you find as you began to do any digging and discussing with people?
When I started seeing my life coach, Tanya, and I started learning about self-love and self-worth, and kind of, because she took me back right to how was my family like, how was the behavior in my family and the belief system and blah, blah, blah. I realized that actually every religion, every beliefs in the world are teaching the same thing. Because she would kind of said things like, you know, you have to, if you want something, you need to have faith that you already have it, you know, with the law of attraction. That's what she was teaching me, right? If you really want it, you have to believe that you already have it, and then it's going to happen, you know. So I was like, okay, like in the Bible, it's ask and it is given, right? So I kind of like, so basically, all these things are teaching the same thing, minus the hell. So it's just like, it's just the life skill that I have to have, which she taught me with the whole, you know, new age movement, you may say.
Yeah.
It's without the whole punishment after life, right? But just living in the present life. And these are the skills that you have to have, you know. You have to believe in yourself, you know. In Bible, you have to have faith, blah, blah, blah. Have faith in God. If you receive God within you, then he's already within you, then he's you, right? It's a part of you. You are, the essence of God is in you. So don't ask anywhere, ask within. Like, you already know the answer. You have to trust yourself to be able to make decisions. And you know, when I start learning all that and realizing that actually all these things that she was telling me is in the Bible, it's in the Quran, it's in the whatever Hindus and Buddhism believes, their own Bible, I realized that everything is now the same. It's just that, you know, they have the name for their each gods that they want, because you can believe in whatever you want and then it became your reality. So then I realized that if that's the case, so that's not real. I can just create whatever it is I want to create as a thing that I believe. I'm an agnostic. So I believe in all the good in everything. Like in every religion, there are good things that I can take and just leave out the bad things and just, you know, use whatever that works for me and leave hell alone. Like there's no such thing. Or heaven and hell is now. It's right now, whether or not I'm happy or when I'm not happy. It's heaven and hell. So when I start realizing that, the transition as well, you know, the I used to have prayers before I sleep, and then it was just so weird at the beginning, like not praying, you know. So I was just like trying to just thanking the universe. So my prayer was like, okay, thank you, universe and God, if you're there. That, you know, for today, blah blah blah, until like I felt comfortable enough not to kind of have the God in the whole picture, and just, you know, this universe and me and my, you know, my faith in everything, in myself, in the God within myself. It was from 2014 and now it's 2021, so it's been 4 or 5 years of deconstructing.
You mentioned a couple of times just the idea of believing in yourself or trusting yourself, and I love just the fact that you bring that up, because the Bible's really clear about that being not God's wisdom. You know, it says, you know, do not lean on your own understanding. You know, trust in the Lord, acknowledge Him and His ways. And what a glorious thing to realize, number one, that that's not true, that the Lord they're talking about, number one, that is Yahweh, and that God is completely, you know, is a borrowing of a Canaanite mythology that, you know, included, you know, a god named Elyon, who had a wife named Asher, who had a son, many sons, one of whom was Yahweh, and that it merged into, well, Elyon and Yahweh are the same. So now Yahweh has a wife named Asherah, and then she gets removed, and now it's just Yahweh. It's like that's the Yahweh you're talking about. That's the Lord. This Canaanite mythology. That guy that says go commit genocide, go, you know, take, you know, little girls as child brides, stone people to death, steal people's lands, cut off the end of little boys' penises. That God is the God saying, don't trust yourself. And you're like, you grow up thinking, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. He's God. Then you realize this is a psycho God this is a psycho God. And if he were real, he would be a psycho God. It's mythology. And just a big evolution of ideas from different tribal people that had different gods that merged and fought. And you're like, wait a second, this whole idea of that weird psycho god telling me don't trust yourself makes no sense. The best person that I can trust is myself. And we need to go to life coaches, we need to go to wise people. But this whole idea of you are so broken, sin has so damaged your ability to see reality that you have to pretty much just say, you know, God, take me away, take me out of the equation and fill me with you, fill me with your spirit, fill me with your wisdom. Let my wisdom be nothing, let your wisdom be everything. And you're like, once you escape, you're like, what was I thinking? Number one, it's not real. But number two, I was second guessing myself nonstop. It takes away your confidence. It takes away your autonomy. And to do that for the sake of something that's just man-made, literally man as opposed to women, like men made this stuff up. And then other men fought and twisted it. And other men redacted it and edited it. And other men added books and other men took them back away. Like men from thousands of years ago are going to dictate to us today whether or not we're smart enough to make wise decisions. Like that doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
And because I encounter a few narcissistic people in my life as well. And then I realized when I kind of think back of all the teachings, you know, like when you're so broken and you need me to go to the light. Without me, you're nothing. All these kind of teaching. I was like, how narcissistic is that? That is so narcissistic. And I was like, this is so toxic, narcissistic, psychopathic, everything into one. That's when I was like, okay, I think the person who wrote it or who, you know, who start thousands of years ago preaching that is probably a narcissistic person who wants to control people.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he managed to gain a lot of followers. And then, you know, to this day, it's still happening. Like, if you think about it, this is 2021. It was like way a long time ago, thousands of years ago. But then, you know, if there's anything evil, then it's that, I would say. And then it's still around. It's still around. So you need to start believing in yourself, and you need to know what you want, who you are, what makes you happy and what not, so that you're not, you know, nobody can brainwash you into stuff like that anymore.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You touched on hell a couple times. I want to just go back there before we move on to the next topic. I love that you bring it up. You've brought it up a couple times because it's such a critical piece of this. And the Christians would nail it home and say, that's the point, is this is a stumbling block to you, but you can't escape it. You need to be fearful of it. And we know that it's real because the Bible tells me so. And therefore, if you try to deny it, you're just making up your own reality. Of course, hell is real. And so in their world, as they look at this, you have a chance to go to, you know, heaven or hell. But let's just go down this route, Phil, you know, playing on a very, very low level philosophically, we're not going to go in the deep end for sure. I don't know if I can take too much deep end at 10:30 at night. But say you were on the Christian side and you're going to go to heaven, right? And you know that someday you're going to be in bliss, you're going to be in heaven, everything's going to be glorious. You'll see God, you'll be like Christ. And then you know that you've got, let's just make it up, you've got some friends that aren't believing. They're going to go burn in hell. But you still have a few more years of your life, you know, say you're in your 30s and you're going to live hopefully another 50, 60 years or more. And so you got all this life to live, and you're kind of hoping and praying these other friends, please come to Christ because you're going to burn. And let's just, again, this make-believe story. One of them dies, in a car crash, and they definitely weren't a believer. And you now, of course, you're sad that they're gone, but you know where they're at. You know that they're literally in hell burning. And you believed in a burning hell, right? A torment. So they're burning in hell. How does a Christian actually deal with that? Because like, I mean, let's say that you go to church, a Christian goes to church on a Sunday morning, and I don't know if they do it here, but or there, but here, a lot of times it's like it's a big thing to go out to a restaurant after church. So you would go to church and then you go to dinner. And so I'm just thinking, okay, so you just sang praises to Jesus, and now your family's going out for a nice, steak dinner, and you're sitting there eating your steak and potatoes, and you remember, oh, so and so is burning in hell right now. Like, how do you enjoy anything? How do you enjoy your steak and potatoes? How do you continue? How do you sleep at night knowing that there is someone who has now been transformed into a body that can never rot, but instead of it being glorious, it's now a vessel for dishonor? They're receiving the wrath of God, actively burning and screaming and agony, and wanting it to end. And now you're focused, like, how do you go shopping? How do you go shop for a pillow or a towel? Like, why does it even matter? My friend is burning in hell right now. And the other side of it too is just this idea of people don't seem to be willing to talk about, as Christians, this idea of you did some finite crimes, like you maybe were, lustful, you told a lie, you maybe even did something horrible, like you hurt somebody, you stole something important, and you really, in a Christian context, you sinned, you really sinned bad. Like, how does that equate to you sinned for 20, 30, 40 years, and you should be burned forever, like it just never ends? Like, how does someone say finite crimes deserve infinite punishment, and that be fair? And it's like, did you ever talk to Christians about just how they see hell and why they're willing to be so willing? I mean, really willing to defend it. I mean, this is like, you're getting into torture. You're getting into actual torture. You're saying, I will defend a psycho god's plan to torture people, and him knowing that, like, he could have just said, I'm just not going to create you. If for example, if we knew Cheryl was going to burn in hell forever, or Tim was going to burn in hell forever, that's a really bad outcome. If I'm God and I know everything that's going to come, it would be much better if I just made sure that you never got conceived, you never got born, because you're not going to, the end is so bad for you, it's not worth it. It's not worth that sad outcome. I'd rather just you not exist than be tortured forever. Did you ever dive into some of these kind of things and other related issues with Christians about what they're doing with this hell stuff?
It's actually yesterday, I was talking to one of my best friends who also left Christianity, and she was as hardcore as I was back then. And we're both also experiencing how our family kind of, disagreeing with us now that we're choosing this path. And she was talking to me about that yesterday. She was like, can you imagine, even if we go to heaven, let's say, but then in the Bible, it is also said that from heaven, we can see down to hell and, the people that we knew that are burning there. And she's like, how bad would heaven be if you can't see the people that you know that you loved back then on earth are burning in there, but you cannot give them anything. You cannot even give them, a drop of water, not even that. How messed up would heaven be like? When you're singing, you're eating with God, and then that also happens at the same time. You can see that. That's just so messed up. And as I thought of that, I was like, that is crazy. I don't think, when I was still like a Christian, it's so funny how I never thought of that. Never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, actively, somebody I know right now is being burned in hell. You're so right. Yeah, that happened. It's just like, it's just as if when somebody passed away and then, okay, that's it. Now,
Yeah.
Next,
Tough luck.
what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Well, kind of like that. That's just messed up.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, in some ways, you if you really get theologically deep into it, in the sense of defending it, you do actually get to a point where you're proud of it, which is the really sad and sick part. Romans 9, and there's some passages in the Old Testament that talk about this very question of, like, why would God make somebody knowing that they're going to be receiving destruction someday? And he talks about it in the context of he is the potter who shapes the clay. And Paul anticipates these questions, and he says, I'm anticipating that you're going to say, why would God make one vessel that's beautiful, like a clay pot that's beautiful that you can use, you can put it on your shelf and admire it as beautiful? Why would he make another clay pot knowing that it's messed up, it's garbled, there's nothing you can do with it apart from pretty much, destroying it, put it in the trash? Why would God do that? And Paul says in that passage in Romans 9, he says, number one, who are you to question God? Literally, like, who are you to question God? But then he goes on and he goes further and he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, you want to know what you'll think about when you're in heaven, like when you're actually have the mind of God? What you'll think is this: if you had a vine, like a vine, and I think this is from the Old Testament, but I think Paul brings it in there in Romans 9. If you have a vine that's supposed to make grapes, right? You expect it to produce grapes so you can make the wine. If it doesn't make grapes, then what is it good for? And so he asked the question, could you use it to make a shelf? Could you make furniture out of it? No, it's a vine. Could you use it to make even something small? Well, no, it's just a vine. It couldn't hold or support anything. Well, what good is it then? What good is a vine that doesn't produce grapes? And the answer is, it's fuel for the fire. You dry that vine out and it's fuel for the fire. And so you get to a point where you're like, when we have the mind of God, the real mind of God in heaven someday, we will look on the corpses that he has slaughtered, and we will rejoice knowing that even though it's a sad thing, it makes God's glory all that more glorious, his holiness all that more holy. And you look at what this is doing, and you see Christians, myself included previously, saying, yes, I cheer God on, because he will be vindicated as the king. And it gets really sick. It gets into like you get to a point where you're willing to look at the genocide stories of the Old Testament, of the Pentateuch and Joshua, and say, yeah, God had the right to go in and slaughter everybody, including little babies. Go God. And you're like, what was I smoking? But it's the party line, and it gets you. It gets you good. It gets you really good.
Yeah.
Endless stuff. What else did you think through? What other issues came to the surface as you were kind of pulling this onion apart?
Oh, friendship. I had friends who we served, the youth ministry back in the days. And then as I was deconstructing, like early years of, deconstructing, she would sending me all these Bible phrases, through WhatsApp and all that. And I was like, can you not do that? Because what don't I know about it? I've been in this business since I was freaking 12. So I probably remember all the phrases and everything. You don't need to send me that anymore. I was like, just stop doing that, because I'm trying to find my own way, basically. And then she literally told me, if I didn't do this, if you died and you go to hell, your blood will be on my hands. Oh. And I was so angry. I told her that, stop talking to me. You're no longer a friend of mine. And then I just blocked her. So for like years, we didn't talk or see each other. And then I realized, I think maybe last year or something, she kind of found me again and be all like, oh yeah, I'm a like kind of in the closet, but lesbian. And then I was like, oh, you were unhappy with yourself that you had to do that to me back then, right? And then I was like, yeah. And then, can you admit it? Like, are you, like, can you admit that who you are, that is who you are right now? I think she's kind of is also coming from like a very strict Christian family, but I think she's kind of trying to embrace that. But if I see like her post, she writes things like when she doodles and she posted it, I feel so sorry for her, because all these phrases where, I'm nothing, God, and you're everything. I'm nothing. Who am I to deserve blah, blah, blah. It's always been her mindset. And that is why she's the way she is. And I'm just like, dude, you're a great fashion designer. You're actually smart. You like girls. So what? So what? Just embrace it. It's okay. You can be whoever you want it to be. You are who you are. Stop denying yourself. And I still feel like she's denying herself because of that. Um, so I don't know what happened to her today, but
Yeah. I had a situation kind of reverse where I had a friend that I grew up with. We were in kindergarten together. Do you call it kindergarten in Indonesia?
yeah.
And we were very young, and memorized thousands of verses together for Bible quizzing. It was like very much on fire for the Lord. And I found out, like, we kind of parted ways as you do as you get to be adults, and found out through the grapevine she was deconverted, and I was emailed her, hey, just checking in on you. What happened? And I remember thinking I wasn't ready to hear it. Like when she told me, kind of where she was with this God stuff, I was just like, I just really didn't have the ears to hear. And I kind of left dumbfounded, but just kind of walked away. Didn't ask the right questions. I didn't respect her enough to kind of have her tell her story. It was just like, well, if you want to walk away from God, if you want to shoot yourself in the foot, they, I guess have at it. But I'm sad that you're doing that. But it was like, there was no sense of kind of saying there's more here. Let's unravel this. Let's tell the story. Let's figure out what's going on with all these different pieces. And it's amazing to me, like, to hear how people, it sounds like for you, weren't necessarily that fussed about your journey. Like they weren't trying to figure out where you were and how you got there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Exactly.
it's something like implication, like you are the divergent one. We are the path. We're the way. We're the
Yeah.
light. And you're kind of doing something, your own little thing. And like if you want to do your own thing, it's kind of fringe. But get back to the path.
Yeah.
Get back to the Derek. As it would say. Well, they don't realize that compared to reality, they're on the fringe. And that's where I love being able to talk to people and expose the reality that you may think that path that you're on of Christianity is normal because your friends are all saying, yeah, we're all into Jesus, we're all into the cross and the blood. But compared to reality and things like science and evolution and history, even just pulling apart the history of where did this Bible come from, people don't realize a lot of the aspects of who made this book and of church history. And once they get into reality, like, oh snap, like we're the ones that have these fringe weird beliefs. We think everyone else, we think, at least in America, we think the Mormons are the weird ones, the Jehovah's Witness, the Scientologists, even as Protestants, the Catholics are the weird ones because they worship Marian idols. And they believe, transubstantiation stuff. Like they've got all these weird beliefs, but no, we're not weird. We've got the good stuff. And then when you wake up, you're like, no, I was into something pretty weird too. I didn't think it was a cult, but it was
Yeah.
Christianity. Not fringe Christianity. Christianity is a cult.
Oh my God.
So what happened next? Go ahead.
No.
I was
What
gonna say,
happened? What?
so what happened next in your story as you're thinking through this? Was there a day, for example, when you just said, I don't think I believe anymore? Was it a slow process where you just kind of looked back and said, I think I deconverted sometime in the last 6 months? Like, how did it, like, what was it like when you actually made your final steps where you said, whatever is reality, I know that's not it? What was that process like?
So I think after I came back from New York, with all the, after like a year-ish of having this life coaching thingy where I feel like, okay, I kind of figured myself out. At least I know what my purpose is already now, like to be authentically myself and you know, to just start loving without boundaries, like it doesn't matter who you are and what you do, you just have to have that compassion. And I would just love to. So what I figured out when I came back is that I want to build community where, I can awaken more people in like in these kind of stuff. But when I came back, of course, I was greeted by the family, and I kind of still had to pretend, because back then I didn't really know how to tell them about it, until I think about 2000, maybe about a year ish later, when I was already with CNN, and we just had, I already know, like, no, this is not it. Because coming back home and experiencing all of that all over again, after I felt like I was somewhere else, like headspace somewhere else, came back, had to experience this all over again. I was like, no, I already know, like, I already decided this is not me. This is not who I am. This is not what I believe anymore. Until I think my mom was talking about, I can't remember what the topic was, and then suddenly it just came out of my mouth, like, I don't think I believe in that anymore. And then, that's when the party started, right? I'm like, what? But yeah.
So you directly said to her,
Yeah.
that what was her immediate response, if you recall?
What the hell you think you're talking about? Like, where do you think you're gonna go when you die? And I was like, I don't care. That's when I had that conversation. I don't care. And then she was still in denial stage, I think, at that part. And then, still, she was denying it for so long. I think until probably last week, when I really was that pissed off, and I started screaming, and I sent them all the links of, this is what religious trauma is about. Do you even know that I'm in a group called Religious Trauma Recovery? Because I am traumatized with this whole thing. This is what happened to me. And if you were telling me that love is passion, compassion, love is kindness, whatever, then I don't feel it, because I feel like I'm being forced into being someone else. I feel like it's unconditional, and unless I am, like a Christian, then I'm not loved. And I think I took like maybe a day or two, and my mom kind of replied, and she was like, trying to not have conflict. She was just, okay, we love you no matter what, but not, of course, not wanting to admit, how toxic the religion is. And it still took me a few days before I even wanted to respond to that. But, like I told you before, it's like, it's going to, like, I accept this is going to be an endless battle, but, it is what it is.
Have you had any of the weird rebuttals to or kind of patronizing comebacks to your deconstruction, where, for example, some people have said to me stuff like, you know what, Tim, the issue is not that you don't believe in God per se, or in Jesus. The issue is really that you were in the wrong church. You never heard the voice of God, really. I have this friend who says that, if you'd heard the voice of God like I do, God talks to me. You can't deny it. When you hear God's voice, you can't suddenly say God's not there, because you've heard his voice. You know he's there. She's like, you were in the wrong denomination. They didn't teach you how to hear God's voice. Or of course, the classic one is, you didn't actually leave Christianity. You were never in it. You were just pretending. You don't really. It was maybe a head game, but it wasn't a heart game. Your heart wasn't in this. You were professing with your mouth, but not believing in your heart. And of course, there's a whole bunch of other roundabout kind of things people say, and just patronizing things like, if you don't turn, like, there's going to be a day you're going to regret this, someday, and it's going to be too late. What kind of comebacks or things do the people say to you now, if they open up like that?
They actually, I think they think that I am being brainwashed by the New Age movements now. That's what they think, because I talk about, your vibrations, your energy, blah, blah, blah. And then we don't believe in energies. Every day, like, not even in Christianity, in physics, we talk about energies, right? Because that thing exists. Okay, you cannot deny that. It is there. It is here. It's in each and every one of us.
Yeah.
So that's what they think. Even like when I do yoga, at first they're like, the church is like, yoga is like a worship for like other gods. I'm like, just shut up already. But they yeah, the whole, where you go if you don't believe in Jesus anymore, or that you're heading to hell. And I'm like, then be it. It's okay. I mean, I need to take responsibility of all of my actions. For the longest time I never did, because I always thought, it's always been God who pays for like all the things that I've done. I've never really taken any responsibility. It's always been him. So I don't know how it feels like to take responsibility. And now I want to do that. So it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. There was a little bit of in the very beginning, I think for me, there's a little bit of fear. If I failed in life, and then they're gonna say it's because I leave God. But then I'm like, I'm not gonna fail. And then I just kept telling myself, I'm not gonna fail. No matter what, I'm gonna thrive. I'm not gonna fail. If I believe I'm gonna fail, then I will. So I'm like, no. I'm gonna show them that I can live a happy life without that thing.
Yeah.
No,
awesome.
It's that thing for me.
That's awesome. I love how you've used the word brainwash 2 or 3 times, and that's just such a great word. And I think that it's a good point to kind of take a second to focus on, in the sense that when we look at what they're doing in terms of their belief systems, but also what they're doing in the sense of the messages that they do send or would send to us of what are the options now? How do we have relationships with Christians, or just what do they think about us, even if we don't have a good relationship? Like what are they thinking behind closed doors? What are they saying? And I'm sure you could imagine, as I do, that there are conversations that happen behind closed doors. You'd probably come up in prayer meetings, just, God, please soften Cheryl's heart. Please open her to your Spirit's leading to please come back to the gospel. Please let her know she's sinful and needing salvation. All that, blah, blah, blah. And what strikes me about that dynamic is they just, like, when you're a Christian, and I was there, so I'm speaking as having been there, but Christians cannot imagine that they're wrong. Yeah. And like that's a big crux of this, and they're claiming to be very, I've humbled myself before the Lord. Humble yourself before the Lord, and He'll lift you up. I've humbled myself in the sense of I've admitted I'm spiritually depraved. I'm a pauper. I have nothing good in me. I'm humble, and they feel like they're being very humble. But the one humility side that they just cannot entertain is, maybe I'm completely wrong. And I remember years ago at this point, but when I first started my deconversion, not knowing it was a deconversion, just started studying stuff. I remember saying to Christians in my life something along the lines of, just so you know, I'm not sure what I'm even saying here, but I'm not sure where this leads, but I am more committed to the truth than to what I've believed so far. And if I can weed through this, and it's the same thing where it's like, yeah, it's God, the Bible, Jesus, salvation, the gospel, then fine, then that's truth. But if truth leads me away from that, I need to be willing to say, I want the truth more than anything else. And I would say, like, for example, we would want that same response from Muslims. We would want to say, when we're witnessing to a Muslim or to some other person in a different religion, hey, I know you believe in your God, but just for sake of argument, if you were wrong, wouldn't you want to be more committed to knowing who the real God is? Like, what if there was a different God than the one you were told? And we as Christians would pray that their spirits would be open to saying, of course, I want the truth, meaning from a Christian perspective, I want the real God. I want to go to Jesus. And we pray that they realize their God is false. He's empty. He's not there. It's mythology. It's a false religion. And come to the real religion of Jesus. And we think that's such a good thing to pray for. But if you were to pray that for a Christian, like, Christian, if you're dead wrong, I hope you'll come to the truth. That's like, there's no way to even compute that. Like, that does not compute. There's no sense of a possibility. Maybe I'm completely wrong about my worldview. Did you see that in your community at all? That resistance to admit that there might be another option?
Yes, because even that was me back then. Because I remember a friend of mine, he's an atheist, and then he showed me all this video about pagan stuff. And my response was like, if I'm not mistaken, I was like, even if it was wrong, I think at least I'm comfortable in here. Something along that line. I was like, at least it's comfortable. And then I realized that now, as I remember that moment, I was like, comfortable in what? I was not comfortable. It was ego. It was totally my ego not wanting to be wrong. But at some point when I was like you, I didn't realize I was deconstructing. But it was when I actually admit, or brave enough to admit, that this actually might be wrong, is when I can see another way in life, because when I was still blinded by, this cannot be wrong. This is the only way. This is the only truth, blah, blah, blah. I didn't even open myself up for any possibilities, out there. But when I opened up and I can see that now there's like hundreds of other ways that people can be happy, hundreds of other ways that you can be authentic, you can be who you are, and you can actually deconstruct. It's going to take years, and it's going to be very challenging, especially, when you're triggered and all that. And that's why I'm in that group as well, because reading other people's stories, I feel like I'm not alone. And that's also important. Sometimes I feel, because especially here, I don't know if it's like that there too, but especially here, when people hear about religious trauma recovery, what is that? Is that a thing? I was like, that is a thing. That is, oh my God, that is a big thing, especially for people who are experiencing it. It is a very big thing. And most of the time, people who experience it were the ones who were very dedicated back then, not the half-hearted ones. Like, when I told you my friends are, just pretending to be a good girl, good boy at church, but they're not really doing it behind their backs. They never had that trauma or scars because they never really even believed in it or devoted themselves for it. I did. And the people who were like me are the ones who were scarred the most. And yeah.
I was curious, did you dive into at all this this whole concept that we touched on a little bit ago about just diving into the history of where Christianity came from? Did that become a part of your digging, your research at all? And was there any topics there that stood out to you?
Yeah, I actually did. But I also remember when I was still at church, there was like one workshop or one seminars about that, where they showed, I think they showed like the I can't remember, was it the cross that they found or the rocks where he was buried or something like that, like showing that, it was real. And then so I was just researching about all these different religions, all these different faith and beliefs and everything. And even if, let's say, there was Jesus and he was sacrificed or crucified because of that, that still doesn't make him the God, the only one truth. Because again, he could be like the enlightened one, the one that really had faith for himself, like he really believed in himself, and then people start believing in him. Again, that's the law of attraction. That's what you believe is true, right? He believed that, so people believe that in him. So now we need to believe that in us, so that all the rest are going to follow.
Did your path include anything related to like church history or canonicity or anything like that too, where you were like, just this whole story doesn't sound right. Like did you, let's go down to pick canonicity for one. Like just the idea, did people ever really bring up the idea of who picked these books? Like for example, just to be more specific, I never was told when I was a Christian, and I went to Bible college. I did the whole everything, ministry, preaching, Sunday school, you name it, it was there. Certainly, lots and lots of preaching, both personally, in turn, preacher preaching, about listening to Christian radio, theology books, devotional books. And I don't remember, I might be mistaken, but I don't remember even once hearing someone say something like, did you know that there's like 40 to 50 gospels or more? And there's probably a lot more, but we know of at least 40 to 50 different gospels. And for someone to say, but only these 4 are the right ones, and let me tell you why. They just said there's 4 gospels. They didn't tell me the whole story. We know the book of Acts. There's 6 different books of Acts besides the one in the New Testament. They didn't tell me there's 6 other books of Acts that are different. And just say, who picked this stuff? And why did they discount the other books? And I love to tell people about my side project, which I'm working hard on, but it'll be a while before it's published. But looking at what the New Testament is quoting, and I've discovered that the New Testament quotes the book of Enoch at least 100 times, and like directly quotes it. And it's like, it's almost like you look at the New Testament, and there's a lot of other quotes from, Jubilees, the Qumran, Dead Sea Scrolls community, a lot of stuff from Homer and all that from Plato. And you look at this and you think, this is in part a collection of quotes from other sources, not like, well, Jesus quoted it and then someone took his quotes and kind of reassembled them. Like the Jesus character was quoting someone completely different hundreds of times. And you're like, they didn't tell me where this book came from. And, and you add in, of course, the bigger picture of like, well, the New Testament is predicated upon the Old Testament. So let's talk about where the Yahweh character came from, which we talked about a while ago. Like, no one told me about the whole Elyon and Asherah stuff. Did you find, as you're discovering certain things, everyone seems like they have different pieces of the puzzle that kind of pop to them, but was there anything like that in your path that you're like, come on, like if you're going to give us this spiel that we need to believe in this stuff, like be fair about it, give us all the story, tell us the whole story? Did that ever come kind of on your radar?
No, I didn't even know that until you told me just before.
Okay.
It would be very interesting for me to read, actually.
Yeah.
You have.
Well, it's stuff like, have you read Dennis MacDonald at all? Dennis MacDonald's work? If you look at Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and you go look at the book of Luke and Acts, the structure of the stories is actually, it matches over and over, and individual stories, like when you zoom in, it ends up being parallels where they're like the same structure but rewritten. So like there's a story about Odysseus and something happens, in Homer's story, and the same thing happens to Jesus with a different outcome. And or Paul, and of course Homer was much, much earlier, but in Homer, with the Iliad and the Odyssey, Odysseus goes to different places on his boat. And when you look at the list, you'd say, okay, where did Odysseus travel to? Well, he went here, 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 and here. You look at Acts at the Apostle Paul, where does it say he went? You find out it's the exact same list of places in the same order. Paul went to the same places Odysseus did in the same order. And you begin to be like, wait a second, could that be ironic? I don't know, but all of a sudden you find actual quotes from Homer, quotes from Virgil, quotes from Euripides, from the Bacchae, and you're like, oh, shoot. And the Gospel of Mark, that's the one that really blows my mind. The amazingness of the zodiac. The Gospel of Mark is structured according to the signs of the zodiac in the right order. Bill Darlison points this out really well. And it's like, come on, if the Gospel of Mark is a story of the zodiac, and Luke and Acts is a rewrite of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and Luke specifically is heavily borrowing from Plutarch, who was a character back then, a writer. Philo is quoted and woven in. They're quoting from Josephus, who's a Jewish scholar. Jewish historian of that day. You're like, what of this is original? Like you keep quoting from all these people. You're making Jesus say what Josephus already said. You're making Josephus say what Philo said, what Homer said, what all these people said. And you're like, what's left? Like, what did Jesus actually say? Who was the real Jesus if there was one? And it does. That's why you get mythicists who say, was this guy actually even real? And there's different arguments,
Oh
but
my
it's
God.
like when he's quoting from stuff 100 times, quoting from Enoch, like Christians, that's what really gets me is, and I'll finish with this because it's a bit of a passion of mine. I can talk for a while about it, but like, even if you discounted everything else and said, I don't want to look at that yet. The book of Enoch itself, like you cannot understand what happened with the Jesus story unless you understand the book of Enoch intricately and intimately. Christianity is Enoch on steroids. And when I was growing up, no one told me anything about Enoch. They did not tell me it quotes it 100 times. They did not tell me that it heavily influenced the story. And I just feel like it's like a fairness issue. Like, if you want people to stake their whole lives on this, tell them where it came from. Tell them where it came from. Tell them what's in this book. Because otherwise they think this is just a message from God. They don't know what's happening.
Oh my God. I need to read it. Can you send me like the links or something, or the names or whatever, so I can look for it online? Because I would love to read that.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think you're right. 'Cause you know why they don't want it to be fair, to let us know where it's all coming from? Because then we all going to understand that, this is not real, and then they're losing control over us, which that's what they don't want to have, losing control, because by controlling us, they have our money, they have our votes politically, they have everything, they control us literally with fear.
Yeah, so
that's all there
couldn't have said
is
it better
about religion. I think that's why I'm like, nope.
Yeah, fear and control. Well, I know I've kept you for a while. Could I ask you to wrap us up with the topic of healing? You've talked a little bit about it, but if you were to be in a discussion maybe with a friend who's maybe been in a similar path and saying, you know what, I'm also deconstructing, but it sounds like you, Cheryl, are quite a few steps ahead of me. I'm just unpacking this, and I'm realizing this religion stuff has done a serious bit of damage to me. Not just in terms of like maybe the shame culture where I was, shamed for, I got caught doing something I shouldn't have been doing. So I was like, put to shame for it. But even just if they were doing all the right things and everyone thought, oh no, that's a really good upstanding Christian person. Even at that level, there's things going on in people's background, in their psyche, in their worldview, that is very damaging. And as people begin to unpack that and they recognize the harshness of what happened to them, that they really were in fact in a cult, brainwashed, they've lost all this time, that they're not actually even at zero yet. They need to work back to zero so that they can start their real life. Like in the Matrix where Neo is like, why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus is like, you never used your eyes before. You've been in the pod in the Matrix this whole time. It hurts because you're literally starting your real life for the first time. As you get people in that kind of conversation with you and they say, Cheryl, I've lost my identity. I lost so much. I want to start getting out of this toxicity stuff. What would you say to someone like that if they were, just kind of desperate for a starting point?
I think what I will tell them is, first of all, that's great to admit that there is a problem. First and foremost, like to accept that, okay, I am traumatized by, let's say, this whole religion thing. I'm traumatized by it. Second is, where can I get help? I'm very lucky. I found my life coach, and she helped me a lot to go through it. And I think try to find somebody or a professional that you can, counsel yourself, and just, let them lead you, help you lead you out of it, or at least let them help you get to know who you are first, right? And then after that, learn how to love yourself. Because this is the ironic part, is that if you even believe in religion, you were supposed to love yourself. It is written there. you have to love yourself first, right? Before you can love other people. And but then really get to know what loving yourself actually means. Not loving self for others, not loving self for God, but just loving you for you. Like what is that? And then I think fourth is just give yourself compassion, like really compassion. When I feel like there are days like when I told you when I had a fight with my parents, I felt really down and I felt really bad and it just didn't feel good. Just have compassion to yourself and as well as to them, like to all those people who made you feel that way, because they to be honest with you, they're the one who don't know what they're doing. It's not us. We know what we wanted to do and they don't. And have compassion because they're the one now that are still in there being brainwashed, and we're the one who are lucky enough to found ourselves. So I think that fourth thing is very, very important. And the fifth is just take it one step at a time. Just don't rush yourself to heal. Don't give yourself a timeline, okay, within a year I have to be like 100% healed. May not even gonna happen for the rest of our life. Maybe we will still have to go through all the triggers, and it's okay. Let's just be fine with it, accept it.
Yeah, that's a great injunction, and it's true. Healing takes a long time, and I've pointed out to people too that even though when you deconstruct or deconvert, whatever phraseology people would pick for that, Christians would not in any way be, of course, applauding you. They would be horrified, probably, but they certainly wouldn't see this as you needing to go through some grieving process. They would just say it's as if to them you said, hey, you know what, I want to start doing some really hardcore drugs. What do you think? And they're like, no, terrible choice. What are you thinking? And they just see it as that kind of bizarre perspective. But what's actually happening is just like if your parents passed away, you would obviously go through a grieving process. And what's happening is in this, your heavenly parent that you thought was there is kind of going away. And it's not that they were actually ever there, but in your mind, they were there. In your mind, you were talking to somebody. In your mind, you were praying. It wasn't the wall or the ceiling. It was an actual God listening to you, caring about you, watching you, promising you that he would take care of you. And that as long as you were in his family and doing it his way, he was going to give you a future and a hope, and that his spirit was going to be in you, guiding you. And to realize that's, in a metaphorical sense, that's all dying. It's like you're going to a funeral for a while, but arguably much bigger funeral than even an earthly parent, which is as weird as it is, because it's, the pretend God isn't even there, but it feels like it's a bigger funeral because this is ultimate reality. And you just lost ultimate reality. You lost the glory of heaven. You lost the afterlife, the heaven and hell. You lost your sense of where does morality come from is just shifted. You realize now morality is subjective. You realize we did come from a common ancestor, and that we are part of a really big story of evolution. And you put all these pieces together, and it's like something. It just, if people just want to act like, get up, give yourself a few days or a few weeks and get back into it, it's like, no, this thing had roots deeply buried in your psyche. And like you said, some of it may not ever come out, and we just have to deal with it. It's part of who we are. Battle scars, as we talked about at the beginning. But it's like, there's still, despite that dynamic, I think it's awesome to think we can make a difference. We can leave this place better than we found it. I remember, if you probably heard the story too, they use it a lot in church here, but the story of, like, if you were to see a bunch of starfish that got washed up on the beach, and the sun's coming out, and they're all in danger of like drying out quickly and dying. And they say there's 100,000 of them on the beach, and you see somebody coming along and throwing some back in the ocean, and you're like, dude, there's so many here. What you can't make a dent in this. There's hundreds of thousands of starfish. The sun's going to dry them out faster than you can throw them back in. And it's like, yeah, but to that one starfish that I did throw in, and to that one, it made the world of difference, because they get to survive. They get to still live. And to be able to say, whatever grieving process I need to go through, and whatever whatever life is left to me, I am going to make a difference and help other people. I'm going to leave it better than I found it. That someone else maybe can look at our video. Maybe you got out in your 30s. I got out in my early 40s. Maybe someone after us can get out in their early 20s, or age 15, because they get to think through it a little bit faster and earlier than we did. But I love too the idea that you're talking about with talking to somebody else. Sometimes we feel like we got to go this alone, and we don't. There's, whether it's a really good friend or if you need professionals, there's people that can help us through this, and I totally applaud you for saying that. I feel like there's so many topics I want to go into. I'm frustrated that the 2 hours that we had to set aside are up. I'm probably gonna.
We can do like part 2.
I'm gonna get sleepy here too before too long. It's getting closer and closer to midnight every time I look at the clock. But I just want to say thank you. To the family situation. I know I'm not in any way involved in that, but just to say, on behalf of those of us in the community of religious trauma recovery and of atheists and other people that are deconstructing, we're certainly sorry that you and other people are going through that, because it sucks. It really sucks. And it sucks that people are literally willing to put mythology over blood, meaning they're willing to put this weird mythological worldview above you. You are less important to them in some senses than make-believe God. And that sucks. And I've got it too. It really it stinks so bad, because you're like, this is so unnecessary. But it is the journey that we're on, and there's nothing we can do about it in some ways. And not to be nihilistic about that or fatalistic, but just to say, we do have to take the cards that were dealt to us, and yet to say, what, if we don't get the situation that we dream of, we can still thrive. And I think you used the word thrive a few minutes ago. I think I used earlier, but there's a way for us to look at this with all of its ins and outs and still thrive. And I appreciate that I get that sense that that's really big on your heart, not just in terms of the religious topics, but it sounds like you just even want, especially women to learn how to thrive. And that's just, I applaud you for it. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. Speaking about family, by the way, you're so right. Feeling like less important. I think I remember when I was way younger, I think my mom, because she's the one who's very strict, right? She told me that, God is always going to be number one, and then you are second. And I think that I had to carry that feeling, like always feeling number two. But that's what I'm deconstructing right now. I'm like, no, I'm number one from myself. And that's the only thing I need. I don't care about any other people putting me wherever they want, because it's their stuff, not me.
Did you ever hear that same message in terms of like looking for a spouse? Like you need to find a man of God who's more in love with God than with you.
Who loves God, who fears God. I hate that word.
Yeah.
Fear the Lord. No, I don't want to fear anything or whoever who's scared about something. No, I want somebody brave to face life.
Awesome. It's so cool to hear this stuff. I love it. And then you know what? People are the wave is getting bigger. People are literally leaving in droves. I don't know if you've seen some of the recent reports and news articles that have come out, but people are leaving, a lot of them. And it's this, I think Christianity is going to become more and more of an issue of they don't think they're fringe, like we said before, but before long, I think like within a generation or two, I won't probably live to see it, but I think within a generation or two, it's got a really good chance of looking more like a true fringe cult, where people are just like, there's just nothing here. There's nothing to this. This is as mythological as Zeus or Thor. There's no reason to stay in this. And I just think that's awesome. I mean, I wish I could live to see it, but either way, we're going to do our best to expedite that process.
Yes. That's also my mission.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything I didn't ask about that you wanted to add, or as we finish up here?
I think we almost covered it all, and I'm happy about it. And I just hope that like this interview, whenever it's published, it would reach more people, and they would be inspired, or at least when they can feel related. I mean, relate to like the issue and everything, and if they're in conflict about religious trauma and all that, know that we are here, right? We are here. The community is here, and if you need to heal, we heal together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Well, everyone, we've been speaking again with Cheryl Marella in Bali, Indonesia. And Cheryl, thank you for everything you've been doing, that you did today with the interview. I love that you have a platform. I hope it gets bigger and bigger, and especially if you have the freedom to speak about some of these issues. And thank you for being part of our religious trauma recovery group as well. I'll have the link for that beneath the video if people want to check it out. But it's just awesome, and we really we need people like you. You're doing a great job. So thank you, and thank you for the interview today.
Thank you so much, Tim, for having me.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.